Okay, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Pat Michael. I'm a volunteer with the Middletown Historical Society, and we're here with Keith Schneider, who is our videographer, and we're in the Appoquinimink Community Library in Middletown, Delaware. And we're here with Al Grimminger, who's going to talk about himself this morning and the history of Middletown. The Historical Society is basically documenting in video the history of Middletown, the 1900s through today, to talk about how the town has changed and what your experience and memories have been. So let's get started. What is your full name, and do you have a nickname?
Full name is Alfred Otto Grimminger, and a lot of people call me Al, and people that don't like me call me worse. But
What and where were you born?
I was born in Philadelphia in a house in 1940.
How did your family come to live here?
Well, my father and my uncle came from Germany. That was back in, I believe it was like 1937, and they were in a bake shop with Stanley's Bakery, who brought them here or gave them a job when they got here. And then I don't know what the year was, but a few years after that, then my uncle and my father had a bake shop in Wilmington on Union Street, and that was until 1952. And then they broke up for some reason. I never did find out why or how. My uncle, he went to another baker in Wilmington, and my father and us, we came to Middletown and had the bake shop in Middletown on North Broad Street.
And what was that called?
It was called Grimminger's Bakery. And then when my father retired from it, one mistake he made is that the people that bought the bakery, the guy that bought it, he bought it for his son, to get his son involved in a job. His son had no idea about baking, didn't want to do it, but his father forced him to. And the thing that my father regretted doing was letting him to keep the Grimminger name for a couple years, and it started running down the business. But then they got out of the business, and now it's a barber shop.
Excuse me, were there other family members in the area, and if so, who?
Yes, there was my brother and my sister, and later on ended up with another sister like 20 years down the road. But they were in the area, and then now my one sister is, well, both of them are over in Maryland now, and my brother was killed in an auto accident.
What was your house like that you grew up in? Was it, how many rooms did it have? Did you have electricity? Did you have running water or telephone?
Yes, we grew up in Ellesmere, or not Ellesmere, Richardson Park in Wilmington, and we had an upstairs, downstairs, and the heat we had was coal fire. You know, had to shovel coal in it, and we did have electric, and we did have plumbing in the house. And then they also added, my parents added a couple more rooms, a couple more bedrooms and things like this downstairs. And it was a small yard, and in fact we lived right next to our family doctor. And that worked out because there were some times we came home from school in the wintertime, and my parents weren't home yet, so the doctor's wife would have us come over, and we had cookies and milk, you know, until my parents got home. So,
What was your earliest childhood memory?
Earliest childhood memory, well, I remember when my mother died, I was about 2 years old when she died, and my father had me on some people that he knew, who, in fact, one of them was a nurse, and I ended up calling them aunt and uncle, but I lived with them on a farm for several years until my father remarried, and then we moved to Richardson Park.
What kind of games did you play growing up?
Well, some of the games that we played, I would smack the kids if they did it now, because we would go down to the woods with BB guns and shoot at each other like cowboys and Indians. And then we'd play baseball and things like this, but they wouldn't be regular baseball bats. It'd be sticks and some soft balls, but that was about it.
What was your favorite thing to do? Like go to the movies, go to the beach?
Well, we didn't go to the movies too much because expense, and at that time I think it was like 25 cents for a movie to go to it, and back then in the 50s 25 cents was a lot of money. And going to the beach, we used to go to, as a family, every couple of weeks or so we'd end up going over to Wildwood, and then it'd be our family and my mother's family, stepmother, her family would go with us, and then my aunt always wanted to ride in the car with my mother and my father, so I was voluntold to drive her car to follow them with myself, my brother, my sister, and my cousins in that car. So that's the way we went and the way we got back.
And that's in New Jersey, right?
That's in New Jersey.
Did you have family chores, and what were they?
Yes, when we were living in Richardson Park, every Saturday we had a big porch with big windows and all, and every Saturday it was my job. I had to clean the windows, I had to scrub the floor, and if I did it fast enough, I was able to go to the movies before the movie started. And that was back when I was like 12 years old.
And then you had chores when you moved to Middletown.
We moved to Middletown, and yes, had chores, worked in the bakery, and my last 4 years of high school, we started at midnight, and my father let me off at 7:30 to go home and get ready to go to school. And my brother, he had to come in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he made deliveries down to Dover, down to Platex Corporation at that time. So that's where we spent a lot of time in the bake shop. And then I hated it when school was off, like we had a snow day or something, things like that, because that meant I had to work longer in the bake shop until we were done.
What was school like for you as a child? What were your best and worst subjects?
That's kind of tough, but I liked math and history, things like this. Of course, at that time, if you acted up in school, then you met the Board of Education. And that Board of Education was an 18-inch paddle. And so we had that, and you got it a couple times and you learned to listen and be a good boy. And the thing is, on that, when my father took us to school, he told them that if we need discipline, to discipline us, and he wanted to know about it. And the first time I got the paddle, I was scared to go home. But when I got there, he was standing at the door because they had called him. And the second time I got the paddle, I was afraid to go home, but I don't know whether he just gave up or what, but he wasn't there and didn't say anything. So, but yes, the school I went to was now the Everett Middle School. That was the 1st to 12th grade at that time. And I went there in the 6th grade when we moved to Middletown.
So that was the only school you went to while you were...
That's the only school I went to there, yeah.
Did you go to college or
No.
anything? Okay. Do you remember any fads from your youth? Popular hairstyles, clothes?
Yeah, one that we had, they called the Don Eagle, and that was where the side of your hair was almost shaved, and then right in the center it was just like long hair. That and I forget what you call it now. But the real short hair, and then you used to put the cream on it to make sure the hair stood up straight.
How about clothes? Were there styles that everybody wore?
A lot of it was jeans and tight fitting jeans and boots. Where now there's a lot of tennis shoes, but we had boots like in the Western time and Western hats.
What were your favorite songs and music?
Well, in school I played the trumpet, so you know, I really didn't have, as a child, I really didn't have too much on songs, but as went on in years, my favorite was country western.
Did you have any pets? And if so, what kind and what were their names?
We had German Shepherd, called him Rennie. Full name was Rennie Tin after the movie, and that dog took care of us as kids. No one could get around us and try and hurt us or anything like that. And even with kids coming around, and we're all joking around, playing around, we had to make sure that the dog wasn't around because the dog would almost want to attack them. But everything went fine.
What was your religion growing up, and where did you go to church? Or synagogue, whatever.
We went when we came to Middletown, we went to church at Methodist Church in Middletown. And then later on, when I got married, then ended up going to New Covenant Church, which is Presbyterian Church, over on Boyd's Corner Road, across from Cedar Lane School.
What church did you go to when you were younger in Middletown?
Went to the Methodist Church on Main Street.
Okay. Were you ever mentioned in the newspaper or other publications?
There are a few things with the military, but
Like
I
what?
can't remember what it was. Just that, especially when our unit, I was in the Delaware National Guard, and during the Berlin crisis in '61, '62, our unit was ordered active duty, and we went to Aberdeen Proving Grounds, and so that was all in the paper.
Who were you friends with when you were growing up? Do you remember?
Well, I had a good friend that used to work with, Bob First, and we would get into an argument every once in a while. In fact, when we were working in the Army Aviation shop in the supply room, of course, Bob First, he was like 300 pounds, or not quite 300, but he was a big guy, and here I am, smaller, and we get into an argument, and the facility commander, he'd come into the supply room. If we'd be arguing, he'd go right back out the door. And then a little bit later, he'd open the door and say, "Is it safe to come in?" And things like this. But we did a lot together, and he passed away. He had a heart attack, and that hurt. But that was one of my best friends.
I'm sorry to hear that he passed away. What world events had the most impact on you while you were growing up? Did any of them personally affect your family?
Well, World War II, since my father and my uncle were in the baking business, and one of them had to go in the Army or go into service, the other one didn't because of the baking business. And my father didn't have to go because he couldn't pass the test when he was in Germany on the soccer team. The opponent, when he kicked the ball, the opponent kicked and broke his ankle, so he always walked with a limp, so it made my uncle to go in the Army. And my grandfather from Germany told him to get in the mess section, become a cook, because you'll never starve. Mm. And so at that time, my aunt was living with us for a while her husband was in the Army, and then that was a rough time. Money wasn't there, and having extra people in the house and all, which hurt. And then that when we moved to Middletown, and things kind of changed.
He made it back, though, right?
He made it back, yes.
How are holidays, birthdays, Christmas, whatever you celebrate in your family, how are they celebrated? And does your family have special traditions, or did your family?
Well, the biggest holiday was Christmas. And when we were kids, after Santa Claus left, then my parents would wake us up, and Christmas Eve, and we would be allowed to open up one gift. But before we did that, of course, I played the trumpet, my brother played the trumpet, and my father played the violin. So before we could do anything, and keep in mind that we just got up and we weren't fully awake, but we had to play a song together, a Christmas song, with the violin and the two trumpets, and then we could go ahead and open up a gift and then go back to bed. And so that was always something that was a tradition that we had. So we knew it before we even got up. We knew what we had to do, so we got our instruments ready to go.
What did you do on Christmas Day as a family, I guess?
As a family, we opened up the gifts, and there were times that maybe the aunts and uncles would come over with their kids, with cousins and all, and just have a meal, and that would be about it.
How is the world different today from when it was like when you were a child?
There's so much going on in the world right now, with all the battles, all the wars, and people, they lose sight of God. And there's too much right now, there's too much eye trouble. I this, I that, I the other, and not the we. And that's not just with family, that's with nations, that's with villages, that's with towns, and people have changed so much. It's not like yes ma'am, yes sir, and things like this. The kids don't know that anymore. And I blame a lot of that on the parents. But at the same time, the parents now are the ones that were never taught it, because this goes back several generations where everything started to change. So we need to get back to the olden days.
Is there a naming tradition in your family, such as always giving the firstborn son the name of his paternal grandfather?
No, not that I know of.
How about your surname, Grimminger? What do you know about that?
Grimminger is German, and it's funny because even with the military, when we had duty over in Germany, the Grimminger name over there is almost like a Smith name here in certain areas. There's so many Grimmingers, but they're not related. But a lot of the Grimmingers were bakers and not any relation. It's just one of those things. There was a lot of Grimmingers that had bakeries over there. In fact, when I was over there with the military, at one time I connected with a baker, and he took me back to his bakery and showed me his big operation and things like this. And I come home and told my father about it and all, you know, and we talked. But that was something. And when we were in Germany, and that was when we left Richardson Park and went to Middletown, we had a month, or maybe it was 2 months, in Germany as a family, staying with my grandfather. And then my cousin and myself, my grandfather made the long pretzels, and we had to put them in the little plastic bags. And then my cousin and I would take them down to the bars, because the bars would have beer and the pretzels, and we had to deliver those every day.
Considering that we're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country this year, what stories have come down to you about your parents, grandparents, more distant ancestors?
Nothing that I can think of on that. It's going to be a big celebration, and it's been planned for a couple of years, you know, knowing, and this is the year, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Are there any stories about famous or infamous relatives in your family?
No, not that I can think of.
Are there any special heirlooms, photos, Bibles, or other memorabilia that have been passed down in your family?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Not even pictures.
Well, we got some old pictures, you know, the black and white pictures, but you know, there's nothing that was really passed down, you know, to the family.
What is the full name of your spouse and siblings, parents, if you want to list them? And tell us about your spouse. What is she like? What does she, you know, what do you think about her? What do you love about her?
Well, Janet Lucy Grimminger. In fact, we met. That's my second wife, and we met at one of the schools in Middletown. In fact, for a couple schools, I was president of the PTA, and I know there was one Silver Lake school where my daughter went, and I got a call from the school that my daughter was getting an award at the ceremony. And I was invited to it. So that morning I went to work in my uniform, military, because I work full-time civil service. And after I got to work, then I changed into civilian clothes and I went to the school in the auditorium. And my daughter was standing up or was walking down the aisle, and she saw me. And she told me afterwards, she said, "Oh, I guess I'm getting an award because Dad's here." And Janet's daughter was also getting an award. So she was there, and I didn't know her. And so then afterwards, everybody was clearing out, and Janet was sitting on the seat, fold-up chairs. That's all we had at the time. And I asked her, I said, she looked like she was down in the dumps. And I said, "Are you okay?" I said, "What's the matter with you?" And she started telling me, and we sat there, and next thing we knew, all the other chairs were gone except the ones that we were sitting in. And so we said, "Well, we better go." So then we left, and so next day I called her and asked her if she wanted to go out to dinner. I mean, she was divorced and I was divorced, and so we went out to dinner. But our kids knew each other before Janet and I did because they went to school together. And so then we got married at the Methodist Church in Townsend. And then at that time we were living in Townsend, outside of town limits, but Townsend address on Blackbird Landing Road. And we were there for quite a few years, and then we left there and went to where we're living now on Louisville Grove Road.
Where'd you get married? You said the Methodist Church in Townsend?
Methodist Church in Townsend, yeah.
Did you have a big celebration? Did your family come?
No, it was a small celebration. The kids were there, and my parents and her mother, because her father passed away when she was young. So, and then we had my friend Bob, who was my best man, and her friend Janet, another Janet, lived in Odessa, was, you know, her, what do you call them, bridesmaid or whatever, and that was about it.
What did your family, and well, you may still, what does your family enjoy doing together?
Well, right now, the kids are all gone. I mean, it's just Janet and I right now. And so summertime, we usually have a 4th of July party at our place because we had the pool and the above ground pool. And then the kids would come and swim, and then they bring their kids. So we end up with our kids, the grandkids, and now even great-grandkids. So that's one of the biggest things they would do in the summertime together. But other than that, you know, birthday parties and things like that, Christmas, we get together for a brunch, and that's about it.
What was your profession and how did you choose it?
Well, I worked for my father in the bake shop until '64. And then in '64 I started working. I was in the National Guard since '57, and I started working for the Guard in January '64 full time, you know, civil service, as administrative supply technician at one of the units. And then I worked in the supply for the Army Aviation Support Facility. And then I ended up down in the United States Property and Physical Office, you know, on River Road, and I retired there as a warehouse foreman.
And then you you volunteer now doing emergency work, right? Can you talk about that?
I'm in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and up until this year, for the last 30 years, every summer been out on the water. 2 years I was a crew member, and for 28 years I was a coxswain, had my boat, and when we were on patrol, then the Coast Guard, we were on federal orders, and the Coast Guard paid for our fuel and per diem rate, and we did search and rescue and safety patrols out for the most part on Delaware Bay. And when Victor Village was alive, that was a home that we opened up, or that was opened up for homeless veterans out on Port Penn Road. I volunteered there for quite a few years, and then it ended up folding up, going into bankruptcy. And so, and I'm also involved with the school district, Appoquinimink School District, on the building utilization committee, and also on the construction update committee. And my wife, for quite a few years, was also on the finance committee for the school district. But you know, she's out of that now, but I'm still on, you know, the construction update and building utilization.
If you could have had any other profession, what would it have been?
You know, I really never gave it much thought, but I did do some farming part-time, and that was doing that and then working full-time, so that kind of helped out a little bit finances. When I lived in Towns End, it was on a 3-acre lot, but I was renting over 100 acres to till, but there was like 10 acres here, 5 acres here, and things like this. And now you ride down the road, what are they? They're houses. All those fields are now houses. And so that I could have kept up, but you know, I didn't.
So kind of leading into this next question, well, first of all, what accomplishments were you the most proud over your lifetime?
Retiring. Being able to hold a job and you know, make friends and accomplish what, for the most part, what I tried to do.
How has the recent development affected the area? So you kind of started with the farming changes.
Well, when we moved to Middletown in '52, there was only one red light in town, and that was the center of town. The limits of the town were south would be just past Sharondale, which Sharondale is now. Going north was Shellcross Place, was the last road in town, and on that road is where my parents had a house built. Because when we first moved to Middletown, we lived in a house next to the bakery. But when they built that house, then right past that backyard was nothing but a cornfield, all the way down to the split between Broad Street and which is now Summit Bridge Road. And to the west was Summit Bridge Road, and to the east was street right out here, Catherine Street. That was the town of Middletown. And now it's expanded so far, you know, and I don't think they can do much more expanding because they'd be running into another town.
How do you feel about all this expansion?
The school district is building schools because of all the people that are moving in. You don't know the people anymore. When we first moved here, everybody knew everyone. And a lot of people knew the bakery. They knew the family. And if I walked down the street smoking a cigarette, people across the street would say, "Alfred, put that out or I'm going to tell your father." And I'd put it out because the worst thing is they would tell him. There was one time that I was standing out in front of the bakery talking to a girl, and I said, she asked me about some change. She had $1 or something. And I said, "I ain't got no change." And then I felt a lump in the back of my neck. And what it was my English teacher. And he held his hand on the back of my neck, marched me into the bake shop, went back behind the counter, back to my father. He said, "Mr. Grimminger, your son ain't got no change." And he turned around and walked out. But that's the way it was back then. And right now, if something like that was to happen, you'd be sued. And that is where things really started to change. Because it got to the point that parents weren't taking care of the kids anymore. The kids were telling the parents what they're going to do, and the parents didn't do too much in a lot of cases, not all, in a lot of cases. Didn't do anything about it. Keeping in mind that back then, a lot of times the mother stayed home. But now with the economy and all, it takes two of them out to work, the mother and the father. And then when they come home, they're too tired to worry about raising a family, or I can't say raising a family, but things that matter, if that makes sense.
What do you want people to know the most about yourself, your family, their business, etc.?
That we're a good family. We tried to raise the kids to respect each other, to respect other people, and I think that we did a pretty good job at it, because they're also teaching their kids the same thing. I see that. In fact, even with my grandkids, that when they were smaller, and I'd joke around with them and all this, and if they would start joking back with me, then I know my son, he would look at them like they were doing something wrong. And I said, "Rick, no, leave them alone, we're all joking, But, he just didn't want them to get carried away. And my daughter, my daughter said, they all did the same thing, so it kind of worked out.
What do you want people to know the most about Middletown's past?
The friendship that it used to be. Everyone knowing each other, everyone helping each other. It was always, what can I do to help you? What do you need? And now all it is give me, give me, give me. And it needs to get a little bit more back to the olden days.
Did you have anything additionally you wanted to say while we're on camera?
No, I think that's about it. I hope I answered your questions and gave a little bit of talk about Middletown on what it was. It's interesting, and some of the questions that you asked were things that I had never thought about until now. It still gives me something to think about.
Well, we appreciate your being part of this series, and thank you for your time and your effort.
No, thank you.